Brought to you by Penguin.
The Time-Travelling Caveman, written by Terry Pratchett, read by Ben Bailey Smith. Introduction. Do you have an imagination? Do you read lots of books, sometimes all in one go, enjoying from end to end and then starting again from the beginning because they were all so good? Does reading make you want to write your own stories? Well, if so, that's exactly how Terry Pratchett became a world-famous author. When he was a young lad, he would pedal down to his local library and take out as many books as he could carry and then go home and read the lot. He wasn't much older than you are now either when he wrote the stories in this book. A 17-year-old junior reporter for his local newspapers, the Bucks Free Press and the Western Daily Press, way back in the 1960s and 1970s. Picture Terry in your head, a young lad on a motorbike, notebook and pen in his pocket, no smartphones or tablets in those olden days, heading off to interview a man who was building a rocket ship in his shed, or a lady who had grown a potato that looked like the Queen. Later, Terry wrote books that became huge bestsellers, read and enjoyed all over the world by millions of readers. He's often described as a writer of fantasy, but Terry thought most stories were fantasies of some kind. In his words, fantasy plays games with the universe. All human life is there, a moral code, a sense of order, and sometimes great big green things with teeth. The stories here, chosen from the very best that Terry wrote for the Bucks Free Press and the Western Daily Press, and which he later dug out of a cupboard and polished up a little, don't have any great big green things with teeth, but there is a man building a rocket ship in his shed, as well as kings and mares, a hairy Neanderthal, an intrepid grasshopper, a Pied Piper, a pinch of time travel, and plenty of exciting journeys, under the sea and up into space. And a good story is timeless, just as much fun now as when it was first written. Written by someone with a fabulous imagination, for anyone else with an imagination too. Professor Welk's Trip to Mars. Professor Welk's homemade rocket ship was rather too big to fit in his workshop, so half of it always had to stick out the door where, if it was raining, it got wet, while he worked on the other half. He still wasn't sure the engines were working properly, so he spent most of his time tinkering about with them, lying on his back, with his feet poking out either side of the rocket, and oil dripping down his sleeves. He didn't know it, but he was also lying in an oily puddle, so his bottom was very mucky as well. He knew about it soon enough when he went indoors and sat down. "What's all this then?" said Mr. Brown, the man next door, leaning over the fence and scratching his head. "Bumble, bumble, bumble." Mr. Welk still had a hammer in his mouth. "Oh, it's you," he said. He had now removed the hammer. He crawled out of the oily puddle and picked up a saw. "It's a spaceship." "Really?" said Mr. Brown. "Going anywhere in particular? I haven't had my holidays this year either." Saw. I had thought, bonk, bonk, of going to, chip, Mars. I've never been to Mars. There was silence for a moment, interrupted only by a piece of broken rocket ship falling into a bucket. As the professor went into his workshop, Mr. Brown heard noises like someone treading on a rake and getting tangled in a hosepipe, which was quite likely since Professor Welk also kept his gardening tools there. Mr. Brown now began to get rather curious. The rocket was about 6 meters long, with 2 large wheels in the middle and a very tall chimney on top, decorated with gold bands. There were curtains in the windows, and the main entrance was a grand front door with a brass knocker. Once Mr. Welk had pulled the rocket free of the shed and winched it upright so it was ready for takeoff, he opened a hatch at the back and put a few logs in. Soon there was a merry blaze going, and the big wheels at the side of the rocket began to spin, getting faster and faster. Welk closed the hatch and screwed down the safety valve. "A steam-powered rocket, eh?" said Mr. Brown. "Want to come with me?" asked Professor Welk. Mr. Brown now looked very curious and very tempted. But eventually he said, "I'd better not. Need to be getting back in to make dinner, and I get terribly travel sick, especially in space." "Oh, well, I'll send you a postcard," said Professor Welk, and he opened the heavy front door of the rocket ship with much puffing and wheezing. As he began to clamber into the rocket, it...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?